Right, we're live. Live at 5. Let's center the camera. Oh, I think that's good. Right. Right, welcome to a little jewelry making live stream. Welcome to Robertson Co. Welcome to London. Today's video, we're going to be using this, the Durston Jump Ring maker and Former. I think it was a mandrel chuck. I just looked up the name for the title. Let me give you a little, see if the camera can pick up on that. Yep, the camera's picking up on that. So yeah, we're going to make some jump rings. I'll show you how jewelers make jump rings, and I'll show you how this Durston tool works. There's a few different models of this. I just loaded it up on my other phone. Let me share that with you. I've got quite a lot of Durston tools. So yeah, this is Durston's website. It's that one there that I've got, which current price £161 plus that. There is that one there, which has got a cutting attachment as well, 260 quid. That one there, I don't know what the difference is between those two. Maybe a bigger cutting attachment. It's the same mandrel and jump ring former. It's just these two sets have a cutting jig, and I'll tell you why I didn't get that one in a moment. But yeah, there's actually 4 models. There's one there for £1,700, which looks epic. So yeah, but they're all basic. Fundamentally, they're the same tooling. You just got extra bits with the bigger sets, if that makes sense. But before we get cracking, let's go on 5 so we can have an Estrella, and let's get the YouTube copyright-free music going. There we go. Right, so the Durston Jump Ring Former. Let's stick with this. I've got a couple of other jump ring formers that I use as well, so I'll tell you about those. I've had this a few years. I actually had to give it a little dust off. It was actually quite a lot of dust on it there. I've just given it a little clean, so it might not look good as new, but yeah, that's a few years old. I've got quite a lot of use out of it. The reason I didn't get the cutting tools for this, I'll tell you first of all. This is phenomenal. I've got, again, it's not a dig at Durston. I've got a lot of Durston tools. This is as well made as any. I think, what's the other brand? Pepe Tools. Suppose just whatever I've not used the Pepe Tools one, but they're similar design, aren't they? But I first saw this design of jump ring former probably around the early 2000s, somewhere like that. It wasn't a Durston one. I don't even know if Pepe Tools were about then. It might have been one of theirs. I don't know what the brand was. But I remember even back then, like, the jump ring forming worked fine. The cutting tools everyone moaned about, like the jig for cutting the jump rings after you'd formed the coil. Cheers, guys. Back on the Estrella. Yeah, so all I heard, even 20 years ago, was people complaining about the cutting jig. And I think the original complaints I heard were that there was some issues with compatibility, because it must have been American, and the American, on pendant motors, the American drill, the handpieces were a lot thicker. I think they still are, like probably Ford and things like that. They have a thicker diameter than the European. Most of them were Swiss. So I've got one here. That's one there. That actually came. I bought a pendant motor on eBay because it was a really low speed one. The one I'm using, you can't buy them anymore, because I wanted one that was, from the top of my head, it's less than 10,000 RPM. Might be like something like 8. Like it's a few thousand RPM lower than the ones you can buy today, because I wanted a low speed one. I don't really see the point in having that super high speed. But yeah, I got this Faro handpiece. It came with these are as far as Swiss. I think these are Italian. These are pretty inexpensive compared to the other ones I've got, which are just, when I got them, they were about £200 each back in the day, and now they're about 400, I think, some of the Swiss ones. But anyway, the key point of that story was the original versions of this, whichever company made them, the cutting tools were made for American size handpieces, which were thicker at the time than the European ones. So to use them in the UK, you literally just go and buy a new pendant motor as well to go with it. And even then, people were having real issues cutting the jump rings. So, and then before I bought this one, I went online because I thought, oh, well, they've probably fixed that by now and sorted out whatever the issues were. But all people were doing was whinging about the... I didn't find a positive review online. So I've never used them. But I've heard from and seen a number of people that have. And maybe it's just the people that, you know, maybe just the people sharing are just the ones that have had a bad experience and other people do, because I can't imagine they'd still sell them if everyone's having problems with them, or they'd have fixed the problems. But, so anyway, I never got that because I wasn't sure if it was compatible with, I never got the cutting versions, because I wasn't sure if it was compatible with my European drill, and I hadn't, if you look at the reviews on YouTube, there's no good ones, so I just went for this, saved 50 quid, because I wasn't sure if I'd use the cutting thing. The other thing is with cutting jump rings. Now, I've always used a saw, and once we've made the jump rings, I'll use a saw to cut these. Through doing this quite a lot, what I've also learned is it's quite useful to be able to use saw blades to cut the things, because you've got more control over the thickness of the cut than you would have with cutting discs that go in those tools. So you can adjust the thickness of cut, which will, to some extent, adjust. It's like fine tuning the size of the ring you're making. You can make it a slightly smaller size or a slightly larger size. Like if you want something, because when you make these, they're never, because of the way they angle on here, they're never like an exact 10 mil and 11 mil. So what you might need to do, you can use a saw blade to actually, if you make a thicker cut, you'll have a fraction of a mil smaller ring. Make a thinner cut, you would have a slightly larger outside diameter than if you use the opposite. So yeah, that was the reason I didn't get the cutting things, and save some money. So. Oh, I'll show you. I've actually got a really old, I think it's antique, certainly vintage. I've got like, I don't know where it was made, I think it looks Italian. I've got one that takes longer. It's almost like a lathe, but with that I've got these, which are made by a Russian, or they were made by a Russian lady. So this is a set of mandrels. Can you see that? It goes from 1 mil all the way up to 5 mil. That looks like a 6, but it's 5. So these have been great. So these are longer and they go up in 0.1 of a mil increments. Now this was a woman on Etsy made these, but sadly they shut everyone down last year, I think. But I mean, she's probably still out there and probably still making them, and she'll probably be back when the current political issues are resolved. But yeah, that was a phenomenal kit. But I don't know if you can, I don't know whether she'll be back, but yeah, I don't know if she'll be back on Etsy or not, but yeah, they were great. Whereas this, I've got a lot shorter dies. But I quite often put those ones in here, and they do work really well for making much longer coils if I'm doing a big job. But there's no reason why you couldn't make a set similar to this yourself. I mean, they are just pieces of steel rod. You could do it with steel rod, brass. I mean, brass will bend a bit easier, I think. No, actually, probably be. I think brass technically is, in some instances, is harder than some steels, isn't it? You can have look that up on Google. I might hedging my bets there. Some steels, some brasses. So right, let's make some rings. Let me give you a little close up of these. This is some pieces of jewellery I made from rings. These are some pendants, just some love knot and friendship pendants, so they're little rings. And I made these in last night's live stream, and I've decided I think I need to make a full rather than just making a handful of them as one off, so I'm going to make a full collection out of this. So I'm going to need a lot more rings to make stock. So that's what we're making. We're making these, which will ultimately be products on the shop, in the shop, hopefully. If they pan out all right. So for this, all these dies are marked on the base. The size is marked on the base there, if you can see that. But then they are all also marked. Let's pull one out. There is a marking, I think. I thought I saw a marking on the dies themselves. What's that one I've got there? 9mm. Yeah, there it is. Make that out, 9. I actually want the 8mm. Let's get the 8mm out. So they're sort of laser etched, so it's quite faint, but you can see it there. There's an 8. See it there? By my thumb. So they're marked with the size of them. And there's a little hole in each of them, apart from the real small ones, so you can put your wire in that hole to grip it. With the other ones, with the Russian longer ones, they don't have the holes, so I actually have to sort of make a bit of wire go into the chuck, the jaws of the chuck. This also would be much easier to do if I had this screwed down to a bench, or it's going to be a real tricky job doing this on here. I'll probably have to do it standing up, so sort of hold this down. But I've done this job so many times, I'm kind of reasonably good at it. So yeah, we just open the drill chuck there, put the mandrel in so that the hole is sticking, so it's visible. Tighten that up, and this is really just a hand drill. And which I'll show you another way if you haven't got 160 quid for one of these with the mandrels. When I first started out, that was how we did it. You want to get one of these that will fit in a jaw, the jaws of a vice, so you can see where it's been cramped into a vice. So you put that in a vice. You can't do it handheld because you need 2 hands to do this process. It has to go in a vice. So you clamp that in a vice and then turn the handle, and then you've got this. It's sort of holding it on there. And then that's just a piece of steel rod in there. You can get old nails. I use old floor nails for ovals, which are really hard to get off. You have to put paper around it and then burn the paper off after you've formed the rings. If you don't do that, they're basically stuck on. So yeah, you can put whatever diameter. You can get, you know, old burrs. Burrs are a bit too short, really. You could, if you were doing some, it's going to more 2.35mm. You could do a very short length of quite small jump rings if you were doing light enough wire. But yeah, you just get pieces of rod, whatever, brass. You can buy rod quite easily online, can't you? So, and then that's it. So that is the budget version. Do-it-yourself version for however much a hand drill is, probably 20 quid. Well, this is just nice having the base and having it coming with the dies and all the different sizes. You're paying for someone to do it for you, aren't you, basically? So right, this is 1mm wire. So I've got an 8mm rod in there. So these will come out roughly 10mm. Because of the way they're under tension, they usually spring open a little bit. And they're at an angle as well. So these will come out a fraction over 10mm. And then obviously that's why I was saying it's quite handy. We're going to use a piercing saw to cut these off. It's quite handy having that, because then you don't really know the exact, we don't know the exact size these are going to be. They're just going to be slightly bigger than 10mm. So you can cut one, gauge it up, and then if you want it to be slightly smaller, you can put a bigger saw blade in, and vice versa. So, right, let's just bend this in. Get a good amount in, bend it, and then I'm gonna put a big kink on it. So I'm sort of going to bend it back on itself. I'll show you that I've done there. It's basically a hook. Little hook on there. That'll hook on. Is that in focus? Yes. Right. So we hook that on. Now this is 1mm wire, so I'm hoping this will be relatively simple to do. You want to make sure it's got it. You don't really want to get knots in this along the way, so you need to make it so that it's going to be able to run up. Yeah, I quite often do this with 1.5mm wire, and it really takes some doing holding this thing down. I'm hoping with the 1mm wire it won't be so. The base of this is quite heavy. Actually looks a bit bigger than these rings I was working with. No, should be alright. I'm sort of pulling slightly back towards the, you can see it's angled slightly back there. Occasionally you get it to, and then that creates this coil. I think that'll probably do. That's about a collection of jewelry's worth, isn't it? Yeah, you can keep going all the way. You can kind of go to the end. It does spring out a little bit. It will get longer once you let go, once the tension's released. So there we go. Let's call it done there. I think that'll be a lot of rings. Tension right there. Right. There we go. Right. I'll give you a close up of that. So there we go. Obviously perfectly formed rounds. Very quick way of making your own jump rings in all these different sizes. Obviously you can pick your own gauge of wire. So let's move that to one side. What we need to do now is release this from that end there. So I'm going to cut this with show it off the mandrel. So, but I am going to keep using that mandrel. So we're not done with the mandrel yet. Yeah, look, there we go. Right, what I tend to do with these, just to keep everything nice and straight and give you a bit of extra grip, is I actually just hold them there, because it gives you just it stops you bend. These are quite easily to bend. It's like a little sort of coiled spring, obviously. So we do that, and then I'm going to start from here, and then we are just going to run. Actually, I'm going to put a much finer blade in there. Let's see what diameter this has come out. I've got a vernier gauge here. So that's 8mm diameter wire. .2. So it's pretty close, isn't it? Slightly oversized. So obviously, like I was saying, if you want them exactly 10mm, you're going to saw blade cutting through. That's going to get you there. So I was going to use a much finer blade. Actually, what thickness is this blade? I think this is a 2.0 blade in here. And they are 0.29, 0.28mm thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a really thin blade in here, because that will obviously make them slightly smaller than 10mm. I'll put an 8.0 blade in. Which is the smallest you can get. Shall I put the blades away? Am I going to snap this? highly likely, isn't it? This is quite a new saw frame. I made a video when I got this saw frame. The Grobe, favourite saw frame. Pretty inexpensive, luckily. Cheap taste. Alright, that's pulled straight out. Yeah, super fragile blade, this one. 8.0. That is 0.17mm thick. 0.17mm. So that will get us down to 10.05mm in theory. In theory. If you go by all the size charts, I made the video about saw blade size charts and all what that. You know, if you were going by that, this would probably be completely wrong size. So then we just have to saw through. Let's start there. Try not to hit steel. The mandrel does not want to stay in my hands, so we're going to go without for now. I cut these at the steepest angle I can because then you kind of don't end up with them banging about on the up and down on the saw frame. You keep hold of them. There we go, there's the first few off. Let me show you those. Boom, simple as that. So I've just got to cut the rest of the collars. Close one of these up actually, and out of curiosity, see what size they are. The same size as those, very close, yeah. 10.15mm, so 10.1mm, which is good enough for handmade jump rings. Obviously, if you took a file, you could probably get them accurate within a fraction of a mil. But I mean, they're already accurate within a fraction of a mil, aren't they? From just slightly over. But yeah, if lives were at stake, we could easily adjust those down 0.1 of a mil. Let's keep going. I'm going to cut all these off. I will solder some up, we'll make some pieces of jewellery. You've got to take them off periodically, because otherwise you end up, especially with the much smaller ones, you've got to take them off quite frequently, because otherwise you hit the back side of the blade and you mark the inside of the rings. Admittedly, if you get the one with the cutting tool and it works, it's much quicker than doing this, in theory. If you get the £1,700 one, you'll be on fire. Where I'm sort of holding this and squeezing it, the blade's getting slightly caught up. If you want to hand make a chain, need a lot of rings. This is where you're at. If you just need to put a couple of bolt rings on something, you're probably better off buying pre-made than investing in all the gear. But if you need a lot of rings, you can have a lot more control over the size of rings you can create and the diameter of the wire, you know, the gauge of the wire they're made from. You've just got a lot more options if you're making rings yourself. Quarter. Pulled it out. I think bent it as well at the same time. So thin. Where this saw frame's quite new, or very new. I think this is about the third blade's been in it. It's having some issues gripping blades, but I'm sure once it wears, once the fastening faces have a little bit of wear to them, it'll be a lot better. I didn't have any issues with the other one in the end, other than I bent it. Bending it. Sweat. It's tough, this job. It was arm day today in the gym, so it's not helping. More work. Right, that has shifted slightly out of alignment, so I'll just pop that back on the mandrel, straighten it out. The saw blade's been catching on it and it's caught on it quite badly then. It's pulled 2 rings up, so. keeping the mandrel in is slightly easier with the longer rods, the longer rods. Let's have a beer, help with soaring. That's the problem with live streams, you can't edit out the broken blades and bent rings. You can't pretend you're better than you are. What I do like about the live stream is I can just bang out an hour-long video daily, which you cannot do if you're trying to edit things. Well, you could if you had a team, production crew, but short of that. It takes about a day to upload a 4K video. That is the downside with live though there. The visual and audio quality is considerably lower. But I'll probably make a long format video about the Ring Former at some point. It'll basically be an edited version of this. It'll be this but 5 minutes long. Starting to wobble around a bit now. This is considerably now. We're getting to the last few rings. It's a miracle it didn't break then. Put it on here. Wants to break this saw blade at the moment. Right, I think I deserve a standing ovation for getting through that with a single 8/0 blade. Round of applause, pat on the back, participation medal. Take whatever you got. Alright, show you these rings. $10mm rings. We're now solder these up into pieces of jewellery, pendants. Close. You have to make sure you get the sawing quite right, like, because if you start slipping about, you end up with marked rings and they're unusable. Which some, you know, accidents happen. I'm not do it myself, you know, but so that's why I kind of go at that steep angle to guide the saw blade through, so that it takes practice. It does. I've had a lot of practice at doing this. Right, so what we're going to do is make some. I'm going to do the same. What I might do, what I want to try first of all is see if I can make a love knot, but a 5-ring love knot, because the 3 are a little bit loose, but I don't know if that would be too tight. I think what I'll do is I'll make a love knot pendant out of these, and then maybe the next live stream will be a whole jewellery making session, because if this one's about the Durston Jump Ring Former, then that's the Durston Jump Ring Former. It's done a good job of making those jump rings, hasn't it? But let's make a piece of jewellery out of the jump rings, at the very least. Give you some ideas or inspiration. In fact, we'll make a few pendants, and I'll give you some ideas about the capabilities of what you can do if you've spent 160 quid plus VAT. And if you're watching this in the future, the pendant I'm about to make, you'll see in the shop. And I'm going to launch them probably for, I don't know, 35, 45, 55 quid, depending on the finish. So each one of the pendants we make, I mean, some of that's obviously not all profit, because you've got materials and the payment fees and the materials. There's a lot of costs. Taxman will want to cut. But that'll be the launch price, just to get the ball rolling, and then the prices will go up. So, you know, if you're watching this in the future, these pendants, these love knots, and that will be on the websites, the Robertson Co shops, and you'll be able to see what kind of price they are. So in terms of the investment in a piece of equipment that you get, if you're selling stuff, selling the pieces you'll make, you'll get a return on that investment as long as the pieces sell. I mean, depending on how profitable your pieces are, you'll get a return on that investment very reasonably quickly. And you'll be able to buy more beer and other cool stuff, more cool tools. Right, the music stopped for some reason, so get that back on. Right, sterling silver this is, so it's going to flux using Argotect here, which needs a little bit more. I use methylated spirits in with the flux. Don't use water; it bubbles up, boils off. I prefer mixing the flux with meth. So I'd do it even if I was using borax, so just borax powder. Yeah, but I think this is a mix of boric acid Probably a blend of boric acid and borax, or one of the two. But it's branded, so I mean, all you have to do is get the health and safety data sheet and it'll tell you. But yeah, with water, obviously when you heat the flux up, it boils. It tends to boil off. But it is slightly cleaner. The meth does leave a slightly sort of sticky residue. Things stick to the soldering block. They do, once they cool down, they ping off. But you know, there are pros and cons. It's not all plain sailing. It's not so imperative with gold, but with silver, if you don't get a good layer of flux and your heat control is a little bit off, or something needs a little bit longer, you know, you get the joints off, you know, if you need to apply heat for longer than normal, then you risk getting fire stain on the silver, or in the silver I should say. And that's another job rectifying that. And because it often doesn't reveal itself until you finally polish the thing. It's quite frustrating because you've got a polished piece that's got to be worked on. Actually, you're basically wasting time polishing it. Tweezers might need cleaning up a little bit. I think they're going to clean up now. Mix ring on there. Well, that's 2 rings. So that would be one of our, that effectively, as it is like that, will be one of our new, this size new, we're still already doing it in different thicknesses, would be a friendship pendant of some sort. We had another one, it comes a love knot. It's basically a mini Russian wed, trilogy ring. Put them on the steel block to cool down so I can handle it. I'm just going to pick that up then, but they're still red hot. Yeah, you've got to put these on and it sort of rolled up together. There, you can get these on the wrong way, I don't know how, but I've done it. You end up with magician's rings instead of a Russian wedding ring. that now, the 3 rings, will be one of our love knot pendants. What I didn't make in the previous live stream was a 4 or a 5. I kind of never really, like, I'm not one of these people to, one of these jewellers very often. So, I'd never say never, but I'm not one for sketching ideas out. I'll quite often make technical drawings to, you know, once I've made something, but you know, I could sketch this out all you like, but we're not going to know how this is really going to, it's the scale, like you can sketch it, you never really know it's the scale, whether the 1mm wide, you know, you might look and go, well, actually that's 2, you know, that really should be 0.8mm wide, it should be 1.2mm wide, you know, but we don't need to sketch these because we can actually make them. I think if you're purely a designer, you don't actually make them, you've got no choice. But then I would imagine that then becomes, it's more like the sketch is really a form of communication, whether it's communication with a customer or communication with the jeweller who's going to make it. And then the discussion comes, well, you know, it might be too small, not too big, and we'll have to make it and find out. So because we can make stuff, we can skip in most cases. The only time we really need to do a sketch is to communicate a design to a customer. Well, some of the sketches as well, before computer-aided design came in, some of them were pieces of art. It was there were some really, I mean, they must still be out there, but there were some really skilled illustrators. Painting gemstones and what have you. There was some really impressive artwork, really. I'm sure they're still out there. Right. That's now 4 rings. Let's try and put a 5th one on. This is going to be a knot. That's the idea, a love knot. I'm tempted to leave it as 4, but maybe I'll do the 4 as well. There's going to be the cat lady out there, there were 3 cats in there, so a 4 independent. There's probably more 4 in families of 4 than 5, aren't there? Well, I'm hoping they're all in the right order. So obviously the ones that did earlier are so caked in flux now, it's hard to, it's not sitting the way it will sit once it's cleaned. Right, there we go. That's 5 ringed. I guess these are called love knots or Algerian love knots. I think there's another name for them. There's various designs of them that have evolved over the years. Put that in the pickle and then I'll give you a close-up look of it when it's cleaned off a little bit. A lot of that fluff needs to come off. Meanwhile, let's make a, you know what I'm going to do while I'm waiting for that to clean? I'm going to anneal this gold ingot. This is a piece of gold we've been working on the last few days. This won't take long, and once this is annealed, that pendant will be cleaned and we can take a look at it. So yeah, the gold ingot, it's going to bring us up to dull red, cherry red, quench it in water, and then pop that in the pickle. When that goes in the pickle in a few moments, the love knot can come out. I melted this gold and made it into an ingot on a live stream a few days ago. I had to do it twice. We did it probably a week or two ago, and putting it through the rolling mills. I think, in hindsight, I think I over cranked it one time or didn't anneal it enough before it went through the rolling mills, because it started out absolutely fine, and then a little way, a few days into the rolling, turning it from an ingot into a piece of wire, all of a sudden it cracked, and it cracked really badly. But up until that point, it was absolutely fine. So then I had to remelt it. I did it live. It wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't a good idea to do that live, because that didn't really pan out the way I'd hoped. But we got there in the end. There was a bit of a hiccup along the way. We nearly lost half the ingot. But I just want to hold this at that temperature for a little bit. Make sure it's cooked all the way through. It's probably a bit hot, actually. Where the surface is changing texture, that it's different colours in different areas, and sometimes it's because the surface isn't uniform. Like some parts have been polished when they've been in contact with the mill, and other parts are still quite dull, where they're still basically rough from the ingot pouring and peening process. So you've kind of got different textures turn different colours when they're heated, different hues, I should say. Some parts of this are red and some parts of it are yellow, but it's all the same temperature. Till it's all the same texture. It will remain like that. Right, that will do. Oh no, it's going to burn the bench. That's not good, is it? That smells. Look at that. Make sure it's not still on fire. When I first got this bench, I mean, I've had this bench for a long time, but you can imagine when you first get a bench and you do things like that, it just stands out like a sore thumb, because the rest of it, I mean, eventually the whole bench is going to look like that. By the time I'm retiring, but every now and again, I think I've sanded this off about twice. They do have a lacquer on when you first get it. I mean, look, there's a burn mark there. A lot of these marks would have been that sort of colour, and yeah, I'll sand it down. It's only because it's a lot of that. Obviously, beneath that, it'll still be. It's going to leave a scar, but once I've cleaned all this off, I will give it a little light sanding. But again, I can't do that too many times, because otherwise, by the time I retire, it will be, you know, wafer thin. But yeah, this is I've had this at least 15 years. Right, let's take a look at this. Where's a cloth? See how this little love knot, the 5. Let's put it on a chain. Yeah, this is what you could make this pendant 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, 4 rings, 5 rings. We could keep going. I think 5 rings is enough, but that shows you a very simple design, a very simple piece you can make with these Durston ring formers. Pop this as a 16-inch chain. We put this on a necklace. It obviously needs polishing. It's pretty rough. This chain's got a knot in it. Get the knot out before it gets worse. Knotted chain is a pain. If you get knotted chain, what I've found, watchmakers' tweezers, put it on the bench, just start moving it around. It quite often gets the knots out of really fine chain, but it's still a frustrating job to do, because you quite often create more knots in the process. Right, let's make sure these are all aligned. There is a way these rings align. If you get it wrong, they don't sit right. Not sure if that's aligned properly. There's a configuration of these rings where they sit flatter. Now, if one of the rings gets a little bit out of whack, right, that is it. Let me get a close up on it. There we go. See, once it moves, it sort of changes. It's quite a fluid design. There you go. Yeah, a simple design. Classic. Celtic love knot, Algerian love knot. They've got a number of different names, similar design. Right, let's pop that mandrel back in there. Yeah, as for the Durston jump ring making machine, definitely recommend one of those. Had this a number of years, it's been great. I've got additional, I've got additional sizes and lengths of mandrel, which you can obviously get, but there's not, that's a very good place to start with that assortment there. My other assortment, the only reason I've got the other assortment is this obviously jumps in 1/2 mil increments, so 2.5 up to 12, but 2.5, 3, 3.54, 4.55, 5.5, 6, and so on. Whereas that other one I've got starts at, the reason I've got this is it gave me very fine control. I mean, it might be something Durston add to the range after a year, but after a while, there's additional mandrels, but they'd probably be expensive if these were made in the UK. This goes from 1 mil to 6 mil in 0.1 of a mil increments, and these are 300 mil long. So for someone with a lathe, it's, I don't want to say easy, but it's a straightforward task, just turning down a rod into 0.1. Well, no, it's probably quite hard to make those, especially down to 1 mil. But I think they're about 100 quid, maybe more. Oh, I think they might have cost about as much as this whole thing. So yeah, they weren't inexpensive. But yeah, definitely recommend that. Definitely recommend Estrella if you're into some beer. And I will see you in the next live stream. Toodles.